What's up? It's Friday, May 16th, 2025. I've got a pretty big update today, pretty exciting update, so we'll get to that shortly. I'm going to try to run through this episode as well. I think last week was pretty lengthy, but either way. So, stock market. Trump and China announced a 90-day pause on the crazy tariffs. That's a good thing for now. They'll continue to negotiate over that period. But the market rallied a little bit. So we saw the S&P 500 go up 2.5%. So it's continuing to go in the right direction. Some people are saying that this is sort of putting off some of those recession fears. We'll have to see how that plays out. I've got a couple of thoughts here that aren't necessarily my own, uh, but being in the business I'm in, especially with our property management business, and I've got a lot of friends in that space as well, and so tourism is definitely taking a hit right now. Lots of reports coming out with international, not just sort of far and away, but Canadians. A lot of people are not necessarily planning to visit the US right now. So it's almost like most of the countries outside are boycotting travel to the US. And so I think a lot of tourism, or other industries, that rely on tourism, they're probably going to get hit pretty hard, and maybe not so much today. So we'll have to see how that plays out. So that's something to worry about, but not something I can do anything about. So, all right, the boutique resort. This is not the update. We did close. We closed escrow. It's officially our property. Not going to get into a lot of details either way. We're going to be building this out in a couple of phases. So phase one right now is kind of just more of what do we want to get done for 2025? What do we think we can get done over the next couple of months and still have some time to host people this year? So there is a one building. It's got 7 units in it, and those are all going to be Airbnbs. They were Airbnbs before, but we're going to do some rehab there. So hopefully we can get that done in the next couple of months. All the RV parking spots that are on the property, we're going to go and do some upgrades there as well. And so we should be able to host around 30 RVs to come in. I think those are the main two things that we're going to work on right away. We're going to try to get maybe a couple of food trucks up there every weekend, maybe every Friday. We're going to try to figure something out where maybe we'll do some sort of a light event. We'll get some people up there, and there is a bar. There's a liquor license that came. So we're going to go and probably just do beer and wine. But hopefully there will be enough revenue that already this property should be paying for itself right off the bat while we get ready for phase two, which is the larger rehab of the entire property as well as the main event center that the building has. So I'll touch more on that as we work through all of that. Now that we have closed, we're in a position where if somebody is interested in investing, then for sure, just send me a direct message, and we've got a pitch deck prepared that we can share out. All right, let's get to the major update. I have officially signed a franchise developer agreement. It is for 3 territories. So I guess if you sign, for one territory, then that's great. Then you get to partner when you sign for multiple, and it could vary depending on the franchise you're signing with. So the fact that I was awarded 3 territories for this franchise, that's a big deal. That puts me in a developer category. So it is with Floor Coverings International. It really came down to the professionalism, the way that the organization overall is just run. It's established. They've got a ton of history, and it's not even just the history of Floor Covering International by themselves, and I'm going to just refer to them as FCI moving forward. But a lot of the corporate team and a lot of the processes and procedures and a lot of the way that they operate is taken from a couple of other really large, well-recognized brands. So California Closets, as well as CertaPro Painters. I'm not going to get into all the details there, but to a certain degree, if you think about it in the same way, with whether it is CertaPro Painters or California Closets, it's not like there's this one major company that just dominates the market. Although a lot of people, at least for me, where we're in California, we know California Closets, but they started out as just, same thing. It's franchise. They started to grow. They started to get the territories. Probably lots of different people can install closets. There's probably lots of different mom and pop shops prior to California Closets sort of just coming in and dominating. And, a big focus of theirs has just been around the experience, right? CertaPro painters as well. You can get painters anywhere, right? Like the same company that does paint in one city probably doesn't operate in every single city, right? A lot of those are just painter contractors that do this on their own. And with CertaPro painters, they came in and they just figured out that, look, if you can focus on the customer and really focus on the experience, and do right, it can set you apart. And so it's now a well recognized brand. And so when I think about FCI, and I did spend 2 days going through Discovery Day. So that was Wednesday and yesterday. I think it was 5 hours on Wednesday, 5 hours yesterday. We had different presenters come in and share a lot of information. So from the chief marketing officer to the chief operating officer to a couple of different VPs, senior VPs on the franchise developer side, on the training side, all the way up to Tom, the CEO, coming in and talking to us as well and allowing us to ask a bunch of questions. I know that Tom is a tennis player and he loves tennis, and so I threw a couple of jabs at him, and so I think we both got a pretty good laugh out of that. So we'll see how that works out in the future. But either way, it went really well. I think going into it as well, it was, I was pretty prepared. I had done so much due diligence, which I've shared. I did a ton of due diligence, and I just had so much information going in. And there's probably two ways outside of the history of what I just shared in terms of like there being a lot of history. A lot of the people too came from, same companies, and a lot of the methods, like I said, that came from the other brands, it's been transferred in. So it's not just like the people that are working at FCI today in corporate have their own experience. There's a lot of experience that they have from those other concepts as well. But the two categories that really sort of seal the deal, like I said, they're really, really buttoned up. Corporate, the culture, they all seem like really, really, really good people that I would really enjoy partnering with and enjoy learning from. On the corporate side of what they're going to provide, you would hope that most franchises you would partner with would have all the tools available to you. But and I've talked to a lot of different franchises, and man, the amount of tools that they have available and the amount of staff that they have behind the scenes to help refine and improve on those tools, man, I came away feeling like, wow, like I haven't had these kinds of conversations in a while. So that was very, very impressive. I feel really, really like they're going to take care of the people that are part of their organization, assuming you're putting in the work and you're doing your part. It is a partnership, right? But the second piece, which I don't want to say perhaps is more important, you could almost say that, in your first, 30, 60, 90 days, you're going to go through the whole training program, right? You're going to have to learn and calibrate as quickly as you can. But then you get into, what's the next 3 months going to look like, right? Your first six, and then what is your first 12, your first 24 months? They've got a really, really good training regiment and a process to get you through that. But just as important, I don't want to say more important, but the peer network, right? I think I've shared this as well that most, if not all, franchises should have some sort of a peer network, right? But that network is only as good as the people that you're partnering with. And so, with all the calls that I had with everyone, um, the owners, I mean, right? Um, Man, they all had nothing but the best things to say. I really came away feeling like the caliber of the people I connected with are, I'd probably say like they're on my level to some degree. Like I felt like, wow, I'm talking to people that get it. They're in the similar mind space as me of they're trying to scale their business. They're not trying to have a job where they're working every day. They all have their goals, their why. Why are they doing this? And they're all pretty committed to making sure that they're reinvesting in the business in the right way to get it to a place where they're pretty comfortable saying like, look, I don't need to grow the business anymore because now I'm just going on vacations and I'm hanging out with the family, I'm hanging out with the kids, and they're living the life that they want. And that was very sort of motivating to hear, especially with some of these owners that they haven't been in the business for that long, right? And most of these people also didn't have flooring backgrounds, right? So overall, really, really strong network of owners. And the way that the corporate sets it up with their momentum groups, right? So maybe there are some owners that would start in I don't want to say a smaller territory, but in a different territory, and maybe their goals are to grow it a little bit slower. And so maybe they'll have a group of 5 or 6 owners they're paired up with that, they move at their pace. And then there are other momentum groups that you might get dropped into where, whoa, hey, these 5 owners you're going to get partnered up with, man, they're all going as quickly as possible, investing as much as possible, and they're really trying to scale and operate at a different level. And so it's cool to see that they've got those options available. And I think, they probably would like for everybody to move and be as quick and scale as quickly as possible, but that's just not the way everybody operates. But the opportunity, and I could see it with some of the owners I talked to, that for the people that really want to go quick, they want to go big, there's that opportunity, and you have those people in front of you that have already done it. So me coming into FCI now, I feel like there's a lot of experience here that I can draw from, not just from the corporate side, but from the peer side as well, which leads me then to PerTech. That was my sort of, I don't want to say second place, right? There was neck and neck. I try to have that open mind. With PerTech, I think, without saying anything necessarily bad, at a different time, maybe if I was in a different place, maybe this could have gone differently. I still think it's a solid business. And, if someone else is looking for business to get into, that probably wouldn't be a bad one if it's available in your territory and, your other options aren't available. Um, Specifically for the timing, though, they moved a little bit slower than what I'm used to and what I'm looking for. And, for 2 weeks, it was sort of radio silence. And I finally got a call scheduled for this past Monday with my franchise developer, and he put his boss, on that call. So I got excited. I probably shared last week that, hey, I got the call coming up on Monday, and now we're going to get into next steps and all that. Turned out that call was just so that the boss could come and tell me that, hey, the reason we're slowing down and the reason we're not able to move that quickly is because we got to work with the state of California. We got to send over the franchise disclosure documents, right? The FDD. They need to review and approve it. And until they've certified it and approved it, we can't share it with you unless you're a high net worth individual, which we are told you are. So you need to get us these documents. And as he's explaining all of that, I'm sitting there going like, I already know that. No other franchise that I've worked with has any problems getting that approved by the state. So were you guys just late? Were you not interested in working in California or having new owners in California this year? Uh, and then I said, hey, I already sent you the documents for the high net worth individual status that you asked for. Yeah, but we need you to just write a letter saying you state this, that it's true, and send us this. And I said, sure, no problem. So I was going to do that. And then I had a couple of questions on the territories, right? This was another one where they had said, hey, one territory needs to have a shop. Those shops are expensive. You need a shop manager to run that shop. That's expensive. Okay, and so if I move into a second territory and a third territory, do I need to have a shop there too? Yes. Okay, so technically for each territory that I want, it's almost like the entire startup cost starts over. In comparison to FCI, I set up one warehouse. I can set that up anywhere I want within my territories, and that's the only one I need. And I could technically grow and expand with FCI even further outside of the territories I have now, even though I've got 10, 11, 12 pretty sizable cities. It's a pretty large territory. Um, but yeah, the cost is literally, it's just the employees I have that would support those territories. They would need their mobile showrooms, the vans. That's it. No additional warehouses, no additional shop managers. So you could technically run a much leaner organization with one home base for a very large or multiple territories with FCI. So that was a big one. I was still kind of like, okay. And they said, well, we can work with you. We can give you a micro territory. We'll give you some expansion. And over time, you can add a shop. And I'm like, okay, it sounds like you're willing to work with me on that, but that's not in writing, right? Who knows if that is actually going to pan out? But okay, open mind. All right, let's get to the finish line with them. So when can I go and when is discovery day, right? When do I actually get to go next in the process? And then they said, oh well, until the FDD is approved or until we get approval that you are a head with an individual, we'll have to get legal. We can't actually schedule anything else. And I'm like, great. So what? I'm going to sit here for another couple of weeks without making any progress here. So that was Monday. I was like, okay, that is what it is. Tuesday morning, there was another one of those group owner calls, right? And so logged in, and the guy that was now doing this owner call had been in business as an owner for, he was in his third year. And prior to that, he actually was a technician at a Pertec, and he was servicing this one region. And he just decided, well, why don't I just purchase that territory and do it myself? So he started a Pertec business with 3 years of experience as a technician. And he started in the territory that actually had existing customers. So he came in with a customer base. Pertec was already well known. And it just, nothing wrong with the guy. No, awesome dude. Sound really, really cool. But, I wasn't the only one. There was a few other people on that call that had some questions around, like, what's your break even? What are you paying yourself? What's your salary? What do your numbers look like? Guy could not answer. Like, he just didn't have his numbers. And we're talking, he's a third year in business. What about a break even? Well, I'm shooting for this. We made this much money. Okay, what's your take home on that? Do you have some sort of a net margin? You got a profit margin? Like, how are you tracking to see just break even? And he's like, well, it just depends on what I'm paying myself, and I'm reinvesting in the business. I'm talking to some of the other owners, and it's pretty consistent where we don't really pay ourselves in the first couple of years. It's gonna take a couple of years to break even. Um, I get the chance to pay myself a little bit since I've got the experience and I'm doing okay. But I definitely pay myself less than I pay my technicians. And you know, not just me, I could see some of the other people on the call kind of go, man, you don't even know your numbers. And I think that was sort of the nail in the coffin for me, right? It was a lot of little things that came up. Some of the stuff that I got excited about before that I shared was that if these people can actually get to break even and they don't even know what their break even is to a certain degree, then of course I've got the confidence that I'd probably come in and be pretty successful, right? So there's not a knock there, but ultimately, and actually now I can probably share the name since I'm already joined. I've been trying not to use names and whatnot, but this guy Mark is the franchise developer from FCI that I worked with. He's just been super transparent since day one. Um, didn't hold anything back, and I've been able to be very transparent with him as well. And we had a pretty good conversation. I think it might have been actually this Monday, um, just around who you're going to surround yourself with, and a lot of the reading, and a lot of even my own thinking around success, right, and how success breeds success. And it's like I look at FCI, and it's true. Like the people that I think I would be surrounded by are the types of people that I probably want to surround myself with. Whereas with Pertec, as much as these are really, really good people, and I can see it being a really, really strong business, man, it almost felt like I'd be the front runner here. I'd come in, and all of a sudden I'm looking around going like, all right, who am I going to partner with? And it might have been a little bit different, right? People maybe move at a little bit of a different pace than me. And then, I would have other people that maybe would look at me and go, wow, we need to do what he's doing. But what positions does that put me in? So that was kind of nailed in the coffin. Came out of that call Tuesday, and I just said, man, everything I know now. And again, like I said, Pertec's great. I've had a lot of conversations, not just Pertec. There's Slice House. There are a couple of other franchises. There's other franchises that I vetted out initially as well that I didn't even get into like the full on validation with, right? And prior to even deciding on going franchise, right, I was looking at buying an existing business, right, non-franchise. So I've spent months, like months, doing a ton of research on this. And of course, I'm a business owner today, so I've got a lot of experience. I had a franchise back 8 years ago. So again, it's a lot of just over the years thinking through how to process and how to validate. And now knowing everything I know, man, really, really excited about FCI. Can't wait to get started. Interestingly enough, Jazzy and I are going to take a call here in 30 minutes with Slice House, and we're actually going to continue the conversation there too. Look, I think FCI, that's me. I'm in the driver's seat there. Jazzy, right? She's going to be in the driver's seat, and she wants to add something else to her sort of resume here as well. And so with Slice House, it looks like you start the process. It's long, takes a year before your grand opening, and so that's a lot of time to sort of just continue the dialogue and the conversation. There's another franchise that Jazzy's looking into as well. So we'll continue to pressure test and validate some of these other franchises. But as far as I'm concerned, man, FCI all the way in. Super excited to get going. Um, as far as next steps go, and I'll just share this. This was kind of interesting today too. Caught me a little bit off guard for some reason, and I know Mark had shared this, but it was in my head. For some reason, I thought that the franchise fees, right? And I should know this. I do know it. You have to pay that up front. Like when you sign, you pay. But I also thought that if you're going to go with an SBA and you're going to get a loan, or depending on how you're going to finance everything, there is a way of perhaps doing like a little mini promissory note. And so for some reason, I thought, okay, I'm going to sign up, with a broker to get the SBA loan taken care of, and then once that clicks, which actually can take 3 or 4 weeks, then I would use that to pay FCI or whichever franchise I'm going to join with. And so signed today, jumped on the call with Mark, and he's like, all right, cool. I just sent you an email with wire instructions. So go ahead and send that $53,000 franchise fee. And I was like, oh, okay. So I guess I'll send that today. And so I'm taking some money out of the HELOC for that. Actually wrote myself a check, deposited it via mobile deposit. That should clear by tomorrow morning, so I'll send that. And then since I did do a developer agreement, then there's an additional 40 for the second and an additional 40,000 for the third territory. So it's 53 for the first territory, additional 80 for the additional 2 territories. So I'll get that sent over next week as well. As soon as that money goes through, hopefully they'll have that by Monday. Then Tuesday, here we go. Tuesday is the kickoff call. I think it's just going to be me, and that's really when they're going to break down what the schedule is going to look like. I'm assuming there's going to be a pretty rigorous process, right? You got your first 30 days, 60 days, 90 days. I believe I'm going to go to Atlanta, which is where their headquarters is. I'm going to go there for 2 weeks, 2 separate times though. So I think I'll go 1 week in mid-July and another week in mid-August. And then there's going to be this soft opening, right? There's a date where they would like anyone that's starting around this time frame, September 1st. That's going to be the soft opening date for me. For anyone else that's buying a brand new territory, that'll be the grand opening sort of their business. Maybe it'll be a soft opening too, because of course, it's not like you just do a bunch of stuff behind the scenes and then you open up doors, right? I think probably starting right away, I'm going to be networking, going out and trying to get that business off the ground and get my name out there before that soft opening, September 1st. Also taking into account that I'm buying existing territories from someone that has been running their business in those territories. Again, this is a special sort of deal. I would like to think that Mark and FCI are sort of rolling out the red carpet for me. Again, I think it's a really, really good partnership. The prior guy that's there now, FCI is working with them. They've got an agreement in place. I'm assuming they're going to buy out the territories, so he'll get paid out. Assuming part of their contract is he can't do anything that's going to damage the name of this the business, right? And so he'll get paid out. Looks like there'll be a transition period where I will first meet them. I'll meet their office manager, probably shadow them a little bit. We'll say towards the end of June and maybe for a week or 2 in July. So maybe a 2-week period of transition. I will be buying his van. I'll be buying his forklift. I'm taking over his warehouse. I'm taking over the office manager. But I'm getting all of that at no cost. That's the red carpet. That's pretty crazy. So I think I mentioned it last week. I'm saving probably a good $150,000 right there. And I'm going to get the brand. It's, they got a 4.9, I think, Google review rating, which is pretty remarkable. That's really, really good. And, 12 years or so worth of prior customer information and data and whatnot. So not acquiring their business. I'm starting a new business in those territories, but I do get to sort of pick and choose which assets I pick up. And FCI is just, they're working behind the scenes to make sure that it's a seamless transition. So feels like not just with what I shared before, but even in this transition period, man, they're really doing everything they can to make sure that I get a head start and get started right away. Now, again, it's a partnership. That should be part of the expectation that they're going to bend over backwards and do everything you can. Again, some of those differences between, doing it on your own, buying an existing business versus franchise, you do get that support, you do get that peer network. So, all right, I think that was a lot. What I'll probably touch a little bit more on, because that's the next piece that I got to now navigate, that is the cost and where am I getting the money and the funding. I have talked about it in bits and pieces. I have decided to use the ROBS plus SBA. ROBS, ROBS, stands for Rollover Business Startup. And that is essentially where you can tap into your retirement account and you're essentially borrowing money from your retirement account. But you don't have to pay back unless you actually give distributions back, or if you ever sell the business, it goes back. But essentially, you create a C corporation, you take money from your retirement account, that money goes to buy shares in that C corporation. So they become an owner of that business. That's why if you sell that business, you got to pay back the owner. And if you 100% fund your C corp with your retirement money, well, then your retirement account technically owns 100% of that business, right? So you can figure out whether you want to fund it 100%, you could fund it 50% of your own money. I'm just going to make it simple. I'm going to go and fund it at 100%. That is for the down payment. So let's look at the numbers. And I talked about this before. With Pertec, it was going to be $500,000 to $750,000 for one territory. Then the challenge, I want to move into a second territory and I want to buy it because I don't want somebody else to come in and set up shop. Well, then I'd have to spend another $500,000 to $750,000, right? And then if I wanted the third, same thing. So it almost felt like if I wanted 3 territories, I'm going to be in for minimum $1 million, potentially 1.5 to 2, right? With FCI, with the discounts I'm getting by being able to pick up this resale, right? And granted, you could probably think if the business was doing really well, I'd probably pay a premium. But the fact that I'm not buying the existing business because they weren't doing well allows me to come in and get a really, really good deal. So I'm coming in, buying the 3 territories and including the assets. Probably the max I'm going to spend, and this is on the really, really aggressive high side, more than what they're even telling me I'm going to need. I'm going to come in with $400,000. I might come in with $350,000 to start, and that means I'm going to go to the SBA and say, hey, this business is going to cost me $350,000. They're going to say, great, you're going to need to put in 20%. I'm not going to do the math in my head right now, but probably around $70,000. That's what I would take out of my retirement account to fund the C Corp initially. And then the SBA would come in with the other 80%. That's how I would get to the $350,000. That other 50, I'll probably use a HELOC later on if I needed to inject additional money. And since I'm now putting up money to buy the territories to pay FCI right away, then I would just reimburse myself. So I'll use my own cash today, right, to pay FCI. And then once that C Corp is set up and the money from the SBA and from my retirement account, once the money goes to the account, then I will reimburse myself. And now all of my startup will have come from the SBA and my retirement account. So technically, I am not using any cash out of pocket to fund this business. So if anybody has any questions, feel free to comment, especially if there's something you want to hear a little bit more about in a future episode. I think the deep dive for today is probably more so on the difference between Pertec and FCI in general and how I would go through the validation and looking at what is a better fit for me personally. What kind of a pace am I personally going through, right? And maybe perhaps the funding portion, we can do a little bit of a deeper dive on that. And then, of course, there's going to be the training coming up. I'll end on this one as well, which is kind of scary. I have drafted a LinkedIn message. I'm going to go right now. I'm going to stop the recording. Right? There's no going back. Failure is not an option. So I've drafted a nice big message. It's going to go on LinkedIn. And I'm basically stating, that's it. Corporate life, retired. No more. That's it. So that means my entire network, all my bosses, previous bosses, everyone I've worked with in the recruiting industry, they're pretty much going to know that I'm not that passionate about that industry anymore. And which means if I fail miserably at this and I try to get back in recruiting in 6 months or a year, that might make it a little bit harder. But you know what? That's it. So with that, peace.